All right, let's talk about something we all experience every single day. Brands are constantly shouting for our attention, right? Just screaming from every screen. Well, there's this one creative tech studio asking a totally different question. What if, instead of shouting, they tried to connect? Today, we're going to dive into Stable Genius and their whole mission to turn brands into experiences you actually remember.
And this quote right here, this is pretty much the core of everything they do. See, it's not about who's got the biggest budget or the flashiest ad. Nope. It's about creating something that actually resonates, something that moves people, that becomes part of the culture. That's the entire game right there.
Okay, so let's break this down. The modern marketplace, it's just a war zone of noise, right? But Stable Genius, they're focused on a completely different metric, something you can't just buy, feeling.
So who exactly is Stable Genius? Well, here's how they put it. They're a modern Nigerian creative tech studio, and I love this part. It was born from friendship and is just fueled by pure ambition. They live right at that sweet spot where strategy meets creativity and where experience meets technology. And it's that special blend that lets them make brands, in their own words, impossible to ignore.
In this slide, this just illustrates their philosophy perfectly. On one side, you've got noise, all the complication, the empty promises. That's the stuff we all just tune out. But on the other side, you have meaning. We're talking clarity, we're talking execution. They don't just talk a big game, they actually build real, tangible advantages for their clients.
So the big question is, how do they actually pull this off? It's one thing to have a cool philosophy, but it's a whole other thing to have a system that consistently delivers. So let's take a look at their blueprint.
Okay, so their whole blueprint is built on these 5 pillars that are all connected. It all starts with the brand. That's the core story. Then comes experience, which is how that story is actually felt out there in the real world. Digital gives them the platforms to connect with people. Growth is how they measure the impact. And technology, that's the foundation holding it all up. Each piece feeds the others, and they're all working towards one thing, building momentum.
And this philosophy gets turned into a really clear 5-step process. First up, clarity. This is all about finding the absolute truth of a brand. Then, they build on that with strategy, creating the actual blueprint for making an impact. After that, creation, which is where they come up with these amazing ideas that are designed to spread. And then, and this is so crucial, execution, delivering with total precision. Finally, acceleration. This is where they look at the data, they optimize, and they scale up whatever's working.
I absolutely love this quote. It just perfectly captures their whole hybrid approach. You've got the pragmatism of an operator who actually knows how a business runs. You've got the precision of an engineer who builds stuff that just works. And then you have the vision of an artist who can dream up something completely new. What a combination, right?
Okay, so we've seen the philosophy, we've seen the process. But the bottom line is, does it all actually work in the real world? Let's look at the proof.
But first, let's set the stage here, because you have to understand the opportunity in Nigeria right now is just massive. We're talking over 109 million people coming online, a culture that is totally driven by youth and live events. So brands can't just throw up some old school ads and call it a day. They need a partner who gets this unique mix of culture, tech, and design. And that's exactly the space Stable Genius was built to dominate.
And this is so key. They're not just in the business of delivering a logo or a website. No, they're building momentum. Think of it like a force that just carries a brand forward. So, let's see what that momentum actually looks like in numbers.
All right, first number for you, 20,000 plus. Any guesses what that could be?
That is the number of people who attended a single stadium show they produced for the artist Harry Song. Look, we're not talking about digital clicks here. This is real people, a massive live experience, and they managed the whole shebang, from stage design all the way to media coordination.
And that scales up, way up, when we start talking about digital. How about this one? 2 million plus.
Yeah, that was the digital reach for the Panaza Music Festival, which was headlined by the superstar Wizkid. This is a perfect example of their hybrid power, right? A totally sold-out live event that gets amplified to reach millions of people online. That is how you make a brand felt today.
So, who do they work with? Well, it's a huge range, really, from these scrappy challenger brands all the way up to global companies trying to break into Africa. But the common thread, it isn't the size of the company. It's the size of the ambition. They team up with founders who just flat out refuse to play small.
And you know what? That ambition isn't just something they look for in their clients.
It is baked right into their own DNA. They've got this vision that starts in Lagos, for sure, but it is absolutely designed for the world.
And that vision, it's driven by the founders, Casey Ogajiafer and Eme Uja. These two have skills that perfectly complement each other. Experience, strategy, branding, digital, you name it. They've come together with this one, single, totally uncompromising vision.
And they have a clear path mapped out to get there. They're not just hoping for the best. Phase 1 is all about dominating their home turf in West Africa. Once that foundation is solid, Phase 2 is about expanding into key diaspora markets. We're talking the UK, the US, the UAE. And finally, Phase 3 is about forging those big global creative partnerships. It's a really smart strategic roadmap for growth.
And the end goal? It's simple, but it's incredibly powerful. To become one of Africa's most respected creative tech companies. And honestly, based on their philosophy and what they've already accomplished, I'd say they are well on their way.
So let's end this right back where we started, with the one question that all of this leads to. And really, it's not just a question for Stable Genius. It's a question for every brand, every creator, every single leader out there. In a world that is just completely saturated with noise, how are you going to make your brand truly felt?